After years of Rogue serving as a superhero with the X-Men, Avengers, and many other super teams, it's difficult to imagine this beloved mutant was once on the wrong side of the battlefield. But it's true. Rogue debuted as a villain in Avengers Annual number 10, released in August 1981. More specifically, she was a member of Mystique's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. This makes perfect sense considering Mystique is Rogue's adoptive mother. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. In fact, let's rewind a little. You see, Rogue's story has gotten a couple of retcons, so it's better if we discuss her life in chronological order. Now, Rogue was born as Anna Marie to Priscilla and Owen, a couple from Caldecott County, Mississippi. Unfortunately for Anna Marie, her parents were part of a cult trying to reach the astral plane known as Far Banks. So when her mother disappeared during the ritual, her father left Anna Marie with her authoritative Aunt Carrie. Of course, Rogue didn't take this much longer. She escaped her aunt's home and fended for herself, calling herself Rogue like the locals had baptized her. This was until she met the shape-shifting mutant Mystique. Like Rogue, Mystique was somewhat of a loner. She was a self-proclaimed outcast. And most importantly, she was kind. It didn't take long for Rogue to accept Mystique and her partner Destiny as her adoptive mothers. Mystique and Destiny didn't just want a happy family with Rogue. Thanks to Destiny's precognitive abilities, the two older women knew of Rogue's condition as a powerful mutant. Not even Rogue knew by this moment, but Mystique was already planning big things for her. Don't think they didn't love her though. Mystique and Destiny were mutant terrorists, but they were never evil just for the sake of evil, so they also grew to love Rogue as a daughter, raising her as one of them. Since Rogue didn't have a family, it was easy for her to lean on the two women for support. She always considered Mystique and Destiny her mothers, so naturally, Nightcrawler is her brother. Given her love for these mutants, when Rogue finally showed her life force abilities, she became an official member of their team, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. It wasn't easy for her though. With every mission, Rogue realized how brutal her powers could be. This is probably what eventually tipped the scales for her to become a hero. However, before this happened, she even made herself an arch enemy. Carol Danvers, aka Ms. Marvel, aka Captain Marvel. We'll talk about that later. You may know some mutants have secondary mutations. This isn't Rogue's case, but it's fine. It isn't like she needs it. Whether she's a villain or a hero, she's among the most powerful Marvel characters, no doubt. Basically, Rogue can absorb the energy of any living creature she touches. By doing this, she takes everything that makes them, well, them, so she can use it too. We're talking about everything and anything. Memories, knowledge, talents, physical abilities, and of course, superpowers, just by touching them. Rogue retains all this information and abilities for 60 times the time she spent touching another living being, so the possibilities are truly endless here. For example, by touching Shang-Chi for a simple second, she can become a top-notch martial artist for a whole minute. Of course, by absorbing life energy, Rogue could also kill her victims if she doesn't stop touching them soon enough. Her very first time using her abilities went terribly when Rogue was only a teenager. She impulsively kissed Cody Robbins, a boy her age. Cody ended up in a coma and he eventually died, traumatizing Rogue for a long time. Ironically, she has never killed anyone with this ability. However, she has a couple of permanent vegetative state victims under her belt. Besides, it has affected her personal life too. Up until around a decade ago, Rogue couldn't control this ability, so in order not to kill anyone by mistake, she wore gloves all the time as well as a full body suit. Of course, this was an incredibly isolating experience that marked many years of her life. For example, it affected the earliest stages of her relationship with Gambit. We'll talk about this iconic romance in a while. Now, not everything is bad regarding this powerful ability. When Rogue absorbed Captain Marvel's abilities, she did it in a more permanent way, which granted her superhuman strength, reflexes, and stamina, poison and telepathic immunity, and even a precognitive seventh sense, like a spidey sense, but not so obvious. All great tools for a superhero. At some point, following Pandemic's Strain 88, Rogue's absorption abilities became so powerful, she wasn't able to touch anyone without consuming all their life energy, effectively killing them. Fortunately for her, this didn't last long. Following Messiah Complex, if anything, things got easier for her. During X-Men Legacy, Professor X helped her break down her powers. For a while, she was able to use her absorbing abilities voluntarily. Then things got complicated again. The powerful mutant Xandra Naramani jump-started Rogue's abilities, amplifying them like never before. Following this, Rogue became capable of absorbing the life energy of others from a distance. This made her incredibly powerful. But there was one problem. Much like before, she had a hard time controlling this new skill. It took her a literal trip to her own unconscious mind to unblock this. It's been a couple of years, but since 2019, Rogue can now absorb abilities via tactile or remote, switching at will. Can you imagine what she can do with that? It's amazing. Since her debut in 1981, Rogue has stolen the powers of dozens of different characters. Some have been very small moments, like the time she kissed Black Widow to be able to fight like her and got to pry on some hardcore Russian classified documents. But others have completely transformed Rogue. One time in Uncanny X-Men number 185, June 1984, Rogue and Storm were training together when Gyrich attacked them. Storm offered Rogue to absorb her abilities, but she fell unconscious after this. When the villain appeared, Rogue had to find a way to control all these new abilities, since she became capable of controlling the weather, the oceans, and even electromagnetic fields. This event brought the two mutants closer, but it also gave Rogue a taste of how the world feels for Aurora. Now, Thor may be a literal god, but he isn't immune to Rogue's touch. In What If, number 66, what if Rogue possessed the power of Thor, August 1994. On Earth 941066, the villainous Rogue joined the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants in the fight against the Avengers and killed the God of Thunder. She stole his abilities and became a cruel goddess, but Odinson contacted her in the astral plane and convinced her to become a hero. This Rogue Thor has never appeared in comics again, but she's mighty. Rogue can also absorb more than one person's life energy at the same time once she absorbed Nightcrawler's abilities, and since Nightcrawler was touching Cyclops, she got his powers too. And speaking of multi-abilities, Rogue once absorbed the powers of 5 different X-Men at the same time in X-Men Legacy number 235, April 2010. Yep, you heard right. Psylocke, Colossus, Wolverine, X-23, and Archangel lent Rogue their abilities so that she could fight Bastion and protect Hope Summers. Believe it or not, Bastion still won, but Rogue still showed more power than ever. She had Colossus' metallic skin, Archangel's wings, X-23's claws, Wolverine's healing factor, and Psylocke's telekinetic powers all in one body. Rogue was way too powerful even for her own good, so this hasn't happened again ever since. But 5 different minds are nothing compared to Rogue's biggest feat. When the Shi'ar created the Hecatomb, a creature designed to consume minds, it ate 8 billion minds, losing control of its own appetite. The X-Men fought it, but Rogue was the one who fixed everything in X-Men number 199, August 1985. She absorbed all these minds out of the Hecatomb, 8 billion minds. Obviously, this nearly killed her. Unarguably, Rogue and Carol Danvers have one of the most complex relationships in Marvel Comics. When the mutant was still a villain, she and the future Captain Marvel became bitter enemies. Everything began when Destiny used her precognitive powers to learn that Carol Danvers, aka Ms. Marvel at the time, would be Rogue's ultimate demise. Mystique proposed to kill her, but Rogue decided to take things into her own hands. In Marvel Superheroes number 11, October 1992, Rogue followed Carol to San Francisco, where they had their first epic fight at the Golden Gate Bridge. During the battle, Rogue touched Ms. Marvel, but something went horribly wrong for the hero. Instead of just copying Ms. Marvel's abilities, Rogue took them completely, as well as her memories. This gave Rogue incredible abilities, but it fragmented her psyche, which is exactly what Destiny had predicted in the first place. She became a self-fulfilling prophecy. How ironic. After taking Ms. Marvel down, Rogue threw her body from the bridge, but Carol wasn't dead. Spider-Woman saved her and took her with Professor X so he could restore Carol's memories. This didn't really work out. Carol had the memories, but not the emotional connection to them, which made her resent Rogue deeply. And so it began a decades-long rivalry. Next time the two superpowered women saw each other, Carol had no abilities, but this didn't stop her from starting a fight. Wolverine and Storm had to help her instead in Uncanny X-Men number 158, March 1982. Years later, Rogue made her way into Professor Charles Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters to begin her life as a hero in Uncanny X-Men number 171, April 1983. Here, she met Carol, who was definitely not in a forgiving mood. She punched Rogue with her newly acquired binary powers. Rogue didn't even fight back. Carol and Rogue have made amends ever since. During Avengers vs. X-Men, Rogue betrayed the X-Men and released Carol and other Avengers from their prison in Limbo in X-Men Legacy number 270, July 2012. To do this, she asked Ms. Marvel for her abilities. This time, Carol accepted. In her words, it was different since Rogue actually asked first. This is a very sweet moment. They share a smile, they shake hands, and they come to terms that their past is just that, the past. Since they became pals, Rogue and Carol haven't shared much. There was only a time when Rogue was mind-controlled into fighting Carol, now as Captain Marvel in Captain Marvel number 4, April 2019. Things didn't go south thanks to their quick thinking, but in the end, they had a heart-to-heart. Rogue and Captain Marvel admit there's too much baggage for them to be friends, but they have also realized they like each other over time. Since their lives have been intertwined for decades, there's no other way for them. Still, we still wish they were true friends. Well, maybe in the future. Not everything is rivalries in Rogue's life. Another important aspect of this character is her intense, beautiful, complex romance with Gambit, her X-Men teammate. Rogue and Gambit first met while fighting together with the Blue X-Men. Gambit, ever the suave archetype, started flirting. Rogue didn't really take him seriously, but during a fight against the Shadow King, this villain's influence had her making out with Gambit with no inhibitions. After the fight was over, Gambit tried to talk to Rogue about it, but she didn't remember anything. The mutant was sad, but he was also determined to get the girl. They kept flirting plenty. Even with Gambit's womanizer reputation, Rogue accepted a couple of dates, slowly and steadily falling for him. Rogue's powers proved their biggest obstacle, though. Since they couldn't touch, she wasn't sure if this was worth it. This combined with Gambit's villainous past to make things worse. You see, Gambit had a wife back in his days with the Assassin's Guild Belladonna. He failed to reveal this to Rogue, who found out in the worst way possible by surprise. Gambit explained it was an arranged marriage, but she didn't want to hear it. This didn't stop the Cajun. Gambit had fallen in love for real, so he kept trying to win Rogue back. It was a rocky road. Rogue's powers didn't let them kiss, and Gambit's past kept coming back to remind him he had been, well, a bad person. So they began a will they won't they journey that we loved from the very first moment. In X-Men number 41, December 1994, Rogue and Gambit finally shared their first kiss as the world almost ended, but it didn't, so they had to deal with the consequences. Rogue took Gambit's personality. She started acting morally ambiguous, running heists and stealing. Besides, she learned tons of Gambit's secrets that had her questioning their love. Ultimately, she decided to abandon the X-Men so she could find peace. During this time, Rogue grew close to a man named Joseph, but this was actually a Magneto clone. Of course, Rogue and Gambit couldn't stay far for too long. He saved her during the fight with the Phalanx, rekindling their relationship. Things were hot and cold for years, think Ross and Rachel with superpowers. Gambit even abandoned the X-Men. Rogue begged him to come back, then vice versa, until they simply decided to embrace their decades-long feelings in Uncanny X-Men number 385, August 2000. From here on, the two heroes became an item. Sure, things were weird sometimes. Rogue became the X-Men leader, Gambit became one of Mr. Sinister's minions, Rogue fell into a coma, Gambit turned into Galactus's herald. It's all a normal day for them. But one thing remained: their love for each other. Well, two things: their inability to touch. It took literal decades for Rogue to control her absorption powers. Before this, there was a time when Gambit was actually immune, but it didn't last long. Lo and behold, by the beginning of the 2010s, they had a normal relationship. Finally, but then Rogue found herself torn between her love for Gambit and Magneto. Remember her relationship with Joseph? This brief affair truly marked her, so she started to feel things for Magneto. Sadly for Gambit, she ultimately chose the villain, leading to a 6-year-long breakup with Gambit. No, she didn't stay with Magneto either. In fact, this relationship lasted very little, but Gambit was far too gone to care. Gambit and Rogue didn't see each other for more than half a decade, but fate brought them back together when the Shadow King put the X-Men in danger, so they had to work together to stop him inside the astral plane. Following this, Kitty Pryde tasked them to go as an undercover team on a couples therapy retreat. They were trying to find Charmaine Grand, a mutant with memory manipulation abilities. The villain tried to strip them of their memories. This led Rogue to see things from Gambit's perspective and vice versa. Just like that, decades of misunderstandings became clear. Rogue and Gambit realized they were truly meant for each other, so they became an item again. This is the last of the drama, we promise. In fact, no longer after that, they got married on a whim after Kitty Pryde and Colossus canceled their own wedding. Everything was already planned, so Gambit proposed. Gotta take advantage of the wedding organizer's work, right? From here on, it's happily ever after for Rogue and Gambit. Finally. Sure, things are never easy for them. After all, they're part of the X-Men. However, now they know for certain that they have each other, no matter what villainous figure comes their way. These are only a few things about the mutant known as Rogue that every Marvel fan should know. Did you already know all this? Which parts of her story do you hope pop up in the MCU? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching CBR.